Marcus Cole. I was 42 the year my family taught me what they thought a life was worth. I was standing in the cemetery, boots sinking into wet grass, 2 fresh plots of turned earth in front of me when the phone started buzzing in my coat pocket. My wife Elena was in one of those plots. My daughter Sophie was 8 years old. She was in the other. My parents and my brother had skipped the burial entirely. They called it too depressing. Then they flew off on a cruise the very next morning. 5 days after I buried my whole world, my mother called. Not to grieve. Not to check if I was holding up. To ask for money. What she said next is the reason I will never call her mom again. If you've ever felt like your family didn't deserve you, if you've ever stood alone while the people who were supposed to love you chose convenience over compassion, then this story is for you. This one starts at the worst week of my life and ends somewhere I never expected. But first, you should know how I lost them. Elena and I met in a woodworking class about 10 years ago. She was terrible at it, honestly. Kept sanding against the grain, measured twice and cut once the wrong way. But she laughed when she messed up. That laugh could fill a room. It was the kind of laugh that made you want to mess up just to hear it again. We built our first piece together. A crib. For Sophie. I still have the pencil marks where we argued about the spacing of the slats. She won that argument, by the way. She usually did. We ran a small custom furniture shop out of an old barn behind our house. It wasn't much, but it was ours. The place always smelled like sawdust and varnish and whatever Elena had cooking on the hot plate in the corner. Folks around here knew us. We were the Coles who showed up on time and stood behind every joint we glued. 5 years ago, my parents handed us $75,000 at Christmas dinner. Called it a gift toward the business. The bank needed paperwork for it, so I drove the documents to their kitchen table myself. Watched them both sign the line that said the funds were a true gift. No repayment expected. Not a loan in any form. I filed those papers away in a drawer and forgot they existed. Sophie was the light of that shop. She loved watching me work more than anything. I built her a tiny workbench, just knee-high, with little clamps that actually worked. She'd sit there for hours drawing pictures of what she called furniture princesses. Chairs with crowns. Tables with ribbons. Dressers that looked like they were wearing ball gowns. She'd look up at me with those serious eyes and say, "Daddy, when I grow up, I'm gonna make chairs that make people happy." I'd ruffle her hair and tell her she was already doing it. It rained for 3 days that week. The kind of rain that turns creeks into rivers and makes the old barn groan. I was delivering a dining set 2 towns over when my phone rang. The fire department. Faulty electrical wire. The old barn went up fast. Elena and Sophie had been working late. On a rocking chair. For Sophie's birthday. I drove home in 3 hours. Both hands shaking the whole way. I kept thinking maybe they'd gotten out. Maybe the firefighters had reached them in time. Maybe this was all some mistake. I got home to a town that already knew. And a phone call I'll never forget. The first call I made was to my mother. I thought, of everyone on earth, she'd come. She was a grandmother, for God's sake. Her granddaughter was in the ground. Her first question was whether the funeral could wait 2 weeks. They had a cruise booked. My brother's family. 8 days. The kids had been counting down. I told her my wife and daughter were dead. She answered in the tone you'd use for a coworker who'd missed a deadline. Matter of fact. Slightly inconvenienced. Then my sister-in-law took over the family group text because she always takes over. She typed that the cruise was non-refundable. The kids had been looking forward to it for months. And surely I wouldn't want everyone to cancel the whole vacation over what she actually called, in writing, a trivial event not worth attending. My mother's reply 2 minutes later was a thumbs-up emoji and the word agreed. Not one of them asked how Sophie died. They asked which week worked better for their tan. I told them the burial would be Saturday with or without them. Then I hung up and didn't call again. The front pew at the church was reserved for family. It stayed empty. I sat in the second row with the people who'd actually come. My Uncle Robert, who drove 4 hours and stood beside me with his hand on my shoulder like a man holding a fence post in a storm. Elena's customers in their work clothes. Sophie's teacher crying harder than I did. The whole soccer team in their little blue jerseys because Elena had coached them. 100 working people packed shoulder to shoulder to say goodbye to a woodworker and a little girl while my family's seats stayed clean and empty on a cruise ship. I gave the eulogy myself. I said Elena's laugh could fill a room. I said Sophie drew furniture princesses instead of regular ones. I didn't mention the empty pew. I didn't have to. Everyone knew. Walking me to my car afterward, Uncle Robert said the only honest thing anyone in my family offered that month. They're not coming back to you, Marcus. Not really. Plan your life like that's true. 5 days later, my mother called. Not to grieve. To ask for money. 5 days later, my mother got me on the phone. Airport noise behind her. You could hear the announcements, the rolling suitcases, the hum of 1,000 people moving on with their lives. Her voice went straight to business like she was calling about a late invoice. We need to talk about the money. The $75,000. I stood in the middle of Elena's empty workshop, still smelling the smoke that wouldn't wash out of the walls, and I asked her what $75,000 she thought was hers. She sighed. The kind of sigh you give a child who hasn't done his homework. Jason's investment business was in trouble. The family needed to pull together. I had to understand the bigger picture. The money they'd given me 5 years ago needed to come back. I told her it was a gift. They'd signed the bank papers. That was 5 years ago, she said. Things change. When I didn't answer fast enough, she said the line I'll hear in my sleep for the rest of my life. We can always make more money, Marcus. We can't make more family. She said it from an airport. Sand probably still in her shoes. Asking me to bankroll the son who'd been lying on a deck chair while my daughter went into the ground. I asked her one quiet question. What $75,000 do you think is yours? Here's what that money actually was. 5 years earlier, buying our first big table saw, my parents had handed me $75,000 at Christmas dinner. Called it a gift toward the business. The bank doesn't take your word for that. When part of a down payment comes from relatives, the lender makes them sign a letter swearing it's a true gift. No repayment expected. Not a loan in any form. I'd driven that paperwork to their kitchen table myself and watched them both sign it. Then I filed it away and forgot it existed. My mother had forgotten it too. Or decided it didn't count anymore. Now, with Jason sinking, she'd quietly reclassified it in her head. From gift to investment. The kind of thing a family could demand back whenever it pleased. She had no idea what was sitting in my filing cabinet. Jason called next. Leading with his failing business, then the family, then the part that told me everything. You're alone now. What do you even need it for? As if Elena and Sophie were a budget line he'd helpfully zeroed out for me. Mallory texted after that, sweet as poison. Family money was a shared pool. I'd taken from it once, and it was someone else's turn. My attitude was hurting everyone. A week later, a cousin told me they'd already built the story before I even said no. Poor struggling Jason. Selfish Marcus sitting on his shop. I want to tell you I never wavered. One night I actually sat down with my checkbook. $75,000 would empty my cushion, but it would make the phone stop ringing. Uncle Robert caught me at it. Sitting in Elena's chair the way I'd started doing so it wouldn't feel so empty. He didn't yell. He just said, "You'd really write that check, wouldn't you? You'd pay them to keep skipping your funerals." I set the pen down slowly. I looked at Elena's empty chair across the room. The one I couldn't bring myself to move. I decided I wasn't going to argue with their story. I was going to outlast it. Going back to work meant facing men who assumed I'd fold without Elena. A bank officer who suggested I sell the equipment while the market was still hot. A broker who told shippers I wouldn't last the season. They said it with that pitying look people give widowers, like grief was a temporary condition I'd get over if I just tried harder. Then Ruth found me. Pushing 70, 30 years running the hardware store on Main Street. She'd been one of Elena's best customers. Bought me coffee at the diner on a Tuesday morning, sat across from me with those sharp eyes that missed nothing, and told me the only business advice that mattered. People are either working with you or against you, Marcus. There's no third chair. Stop hoping the doubters come around. Make them irrelevant. So I called every customer who'd ever trusted Elena and me. Told them the truth. The owner was still the man with sawdust in his hair. And he was still on time. 3 weeks later, a regional grocery contract came across my desk. Too big for one man. The kind that builds a company. I hired 2 young carpenters who'd lost their jobs when a bigger shop closed down. Good kids. Eager. Reminded me of myself at that age. The next week, I filed the paperwork. Marcus Cole Custom Woodwork became Elena and Sophie Custom Woodwork. I kept their names. They were gone and I kept them anyway. Because some names you earn by loving someone, not by keeping them. I painted the trucks deep green. Put their names in clean white letters on the doors. And underneath, small, I traced Sophie's 3 lumpy crayon trucks exact from her drawing. Word traveled to my family the way it does in a small town. And suddenly the son who was alone now was running real trucks with his name on the door. My mother sent one warm text. "We're so proud of what you've built, honey." Proud of the very thing she tried to take $75,000 out of. I didn't answer. While cleaning out the damaged part of the workshop, I found Elena's final project. A hope chest she'd been building for Sophie. It survived the fire, mostly intact. The wood was blackened on one side, but the joinery held. She'd built it to last. Inside the chest, hidden in a false bottom I'd never noticed, I found a folder. The folder contained 3 things. 1. A registered trust document. Elena had secretly set up a trust for Sophie. The shop and the land were in it. Funded by her inheritance from her own parents. Money I didn't even know existed. 2. A letter from Elena. "My dearest Marcus, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I set up this trust because I knew your family would try to take everything. I saw how they looked at what we built. The $75,000 from your parents was a gift. I have the bank papers right here with this letter. But the shop and land are in Sophie's trust. If Sophie is gone too, it goes to you, but it can never be sold to your family. Promise me you'll keep it. Promise me you'll keep building. I love you. I always will. Elena." 3. The original bank document proving the $75,000 was a gift. Not a loan. Not an investment. A gift. I sat in the workshop, holding the letter. Cried for the first time since the fire. She'd known. She'd seen it coming. And she'd protected me from beyond the grave. I wiped my face with the back of my hand. Looked at Elena's empty chair across the room. The one I still couldn't bring myself to move. Then I made a plan. I'm going to that family meeting they called. And I'm going to tell them the truth. The family called a meeting at my parents' house. They thought they were going to pressure me into giving them the money. 15 relatives there. My parents, my brother Jason, my sister-in-law Mallory, a few aunts and uncles. The dining room smelled like pot roast and self-righteousness. We got through the small talk. Then my father stood up. Tapped his glass. Some of us have been blessed and forgotten where the blessing came from, he said. We helped Marcus when he had nothing. $75,000. And now that he's done well, he won't lift a finger for his own brother. Mallory added, sweet as poison, it's a shame we even missed that funeral for family. And this is the thanks. 15 people braced for a scene. And I gave them quiet instead. I didn't raise my voice. I reached into my coat and laid a printed timeline flat on the white tablecloth. This is the day my wife and daughter were buried. Pause. And this is the date you posted photos from the cruise. Pause. You called my daughter's funeral trivial. Then you flew home and asked the grieving husband for $75,000. The room went still. Jason exploded out of his chair, shouting that I was twisting things. That his dealership was failing. That I owed this family. I let him finish. Then I took out the second page and slid it across the cloth to my father. You both signed this at your own kitchen table. It says in your own signatures that the $75,000 was a gift. No repayment expected. Not a loan in any form. So a demand to pay it back as a debt doesn't hold up. You can ask me for money. You can't bill me for a gift you swore wasn't one. I took out the third page. The trust document. And this is the shop. It's in a trust for Sophie. If Sophie is gone, it's mine. But it can never be sold to your family. My wife made sure of that. Jason was finally out of steam. Mallory was staring at her hands. My mother was gone white. Then I said 3 things. Gently. Because they didn't need force behind them. To Mallory, I said, you taught me which events are worth attending. I'll remember that the rest of my life. To my mother, I said, you told me we can't make more family. You were right. So I've stopped trying to make one out of you. To Jason, I said, you asked what I even needed the money for. I needed it to bury my wife and daughter. You needed a cruise. Aunt Carol stood up from the back. I was at that funeral. Everything he just said is true. I have the dates. After that, the room turned. Slowly. Then all at once. An uncle quietly moved the gift letter so more people could read it. My mother said my name once, like a question, like she still believed there was a version where I sat back down for pie. There wasn't. I folded my 2 pages back into my coat. I hope you figure it out, Jason. I really do. But you're going to have to figure it out without me. Then I walked out into the parking lot. And the air was clean and cold. And I could breathe. The story that I owed them $75,000 died in that room. And never came back. Jason's dealership folded that fall. I heard about it from a cousin, the same way I heard about everything else now. From a distance. I went no contact with my parents and my brother. No dramatic letter. No blow-up. I just stopped picking up. And after a while, they stopped calling. And the quiet that came in behind them was the most peaceful thing I'd felt in years. I kept the people who showed up. Uncle Robert comes for Sunday dinner and sits in Elena's chair like it was always his. Ruth and I talk every week. The 2 young carpenters I hired, they're family now. We built something together that nobody can take away. The shop thrives. 5 employees now. Every piece that leaves this place has a small carving hidden somewhere. Sophie's drawing of a furniture princess. A chair with a crown. Customers ask about it. And I get to say her name out loud. Sophie. My daughter. She drew that. Rolling down every road Elena and I ever traveled. I finally moved Elena's yellow rain boots. Just to a shelf by the door where I can see them. And still get out at 5 in the morning without tripping over the memory of her. This spring, almost a year out, I drove to the cemetery at dawn. Brought a fistful of wild daisies. Left them on the graves for the two people who actually built me. The grass was green again. The world had kept turning. And for the first time in a long time, standing there didn't break me. It just held me. Family isn't the people who share your blood. It's the people who show up when there's nothing left to gain. And the ones who walk away the moment there is. If someone keeps asking you to carry them while they skip your hardest days, let this be your sign to set the burden down. You don't owe a debt you never signed. My name is Marcus. And I'm still building. Still loving. Still here.